Hello friends, this is Ashton. So I think we are doing the last part of this project, and today I'm going to add the functionalities for this edit button and delete button. Okay, so this is our target today. And if you haven't watched my videos for this, basically for this project, we have four parts. Okay, and this is part D. So in part A, we basically build the basic structure for this application, and we read data from the backend like this, have some pagination, and have a table like this. And in our part B, we add a new form here to create a customer. Okay, and in part C, we did some improvement to this application. Okay, it's meant for the end users. And we also add a column for actions in part C. So we have two buttons here, but the functionalities is not added for this edit button and delete button. So right now they have the same functionalities with this add new customer button. Okay, so this is the main target today we're going to fix for this edit and delete. So let's get started. Let me close this application and close this project, and then make a copy of part C. Let's open this part C. And rename it first. So this is the part D. And let me deploy it first because this is a new project. Web app for dev. Okay, in the meantime, I saw some comments there. You want to add more features to this application, but honestly, I want to focus on the basics. Like if you want to add a search functionalities to this application, if you mastered the basics, you can do it very easily. So basically, with my understanding, the first part is basically a search features like this. So basically, if I open this web application, the first task or first step this app is doing here is this read. So basically, it's read data from the backend and displayed here at the front end. So this process is basically a search. Okay, so this is a search with some conditions. Basically, we'd like to search the first, maybe not the first, the last, because this is last record, the last 15 records from the backend. Okay, we do a search like this. Okay, so this is kind of search, but this is actually the read. So basically, search is actually the read. You basically read data from the backend. This is a kind of search. Okay, and you only need to update your filters. And this is a kind of special filters because we do the paginations here. Every time we read 15 records from the backend, and with your search functionalities, maybe you want to search the record with a name or email or phone like that. So every table could have different search filters. So that's why it is not that easy to do. Because you can, if you don't know the basics, I show you example. You can do a search for this customer form, but when your table is changed, you don't know how to do it. Okay, so you need to know the basics first. If you know how to do this kind of pagination, the search, I can say the search is very easy for you to do. Okay, so that's the main point here. And let's get back to these edit and delete features here today. All right. So basically, this form is not for the edit customer. Okay, it's for new customer. And if you check our code, we have a component here called new customer form. Let me zoom in a little bit, maybe. So basically, this component here is the form. Is basically the new customer form here. So the most easy or the most easiest way to understand. So you can make a copy of this new customer form, right? And do some change there and make it for the edit form. And also you can make a copy of this form and make it for the delete form. So of course you can do that. That's basically a style or a way to do the same job, okay? But here I'd like to try another way, okay? So I'd like to use this form, use this component. So basically I'm going to make these components for all of these tasks. So I can use this component for creating new customer. I also can use this component to edit a customer. And also, we also can use this component to delete a customer. Okay, so this is basically my design for the customer form. So because this form is right now is not only for new customer, so I'd like to rename it a little bit. So remove this new dash and call it customer form. Also, not for new customer anymore. And then we can use this customer form to edit, to create, to delete, okay? And to basically to accomplish this task, we need to add a properties here. I call it mode. So basically we have 3 modes here. It could be create mode or update mode or delete mode, okay? So this is a string. So when this mode is create, I'd like to show this new customer title to create, right? Create customer. So we can put the mode here. So basically if this mode is create, this title we're going to be create customer. If this mode is update, and this title is update customer, just like that. And also I'd like to change this create to mode because we have 3 modes here. So different mode, we have different buttons here, right? This is submit button. So if this is the create customer, we have a create customer button here. Okay, so this is the mode. And also I'd like to change this event here because we emit create customer event here. I like to change it because this is not only for create customer, we could use it to edit customer or delete the customer. So I'd like to change it to submit. Okay, so this is the change we need to do for this component. And in this index.html file, we have this component. So remember, we remove this new dash. So this right now is the customer form is our component, and we added a mode here. So this mode, and also this is not the create customer, which is a submit. And we'd like to change this function to submit function. Okay. And right now we can go back to our Vue.js index file. So here in the data property, I'd like to add a mode here. So the mode by default, I'd like to set it to create. So this is our default mode, so which is a create. Basically is a create mode for the form, right? And here show create form, I'd like to set this mode to create, right? So this is the show created form. But I'd like to create another function because here we have a submit function here which is not defined. So I need to define this submit function. and we can check if this.mode is equal to create. That means we are using the form to create a new customer, right? And then we call this create customer. So this is a function here to create a new customer. So as you can see, else if this mode equal to update, and we can call this function this update customer, right? And else if this mode equal to delete, and we can call this function delete customer. So basically this function and this function are not yet defined. Okay, so update customer. So let's just comment out because these functions are not yet defined. And I'd like to change this function. I'll make a copy of this function, and let's make two of them because I'd like to create a function to show edit form, right? And another function to show delete form. This is show create form, so I'd like to change the mode to update. So this is for edit, and this one I'd like to change it to delete. And let me comment this out first. And in our index file, so if you find the edit button here, so this function, as you can see, show create form. I'd like to change it to show edit form. And this one, show delete form. And let me check if this now is working. So if I click this on edit, so as you can see here, at least we have this button, update customer, right? So if I click on this, delete customer, and if I click on this is for new customer, so it's create customer. So basically, this function here is now working fine, but we need to do something here. In this file, js.index file, we need to update the data for this form, okay? So I'd like to make a copy of this data. I'd like to pass the item from the front end, not from the front end, from the index here. So basically, I'd like to show the item, pass the item here, because for the edit form, we have an item to edit, basically a record, a customer. So as you can see here, we have an item, okay, a list of items. I'd like to show the edit form with this item as a parameter. So we can use it in our code. So here's the item, and here's the item. So basically, I'd like to pass the values from these items to this customer form, okay? So object.keys. I'd like to go through this object, this custom form object, okay? Or for each key. So I'd like to check if this key is in this item. So if item has own property, so if we have this key in the item, then I'd like to set the key, the value to item.value, item.key, basically the item value here. I'm not sure if you can remember the form data like this. So we have an object for this customer form. So basically, if the item ID, if the item has the ID, right, we need to set the ID, the value of the ID. Basically here is null. But if there is an ID in the item, I'd like to set the value, the ID value of the item to this object, right? So this is what I'm doing here. Okay, and I can make a copy of this and put it here for the edit. But the only difference here, I'd like to disable all the keys. Sorry, not the keys, because this is edit form. I'd like to disable all the items, right? All items that I don't want to the users to edit them. So here, disabled equal to true. So let me show you what I'm doing here. So maybe this one is a good example. We have the ID here. So if I click on edit, we get the value Netflix for the name and email, right? And then we have the city, and then we have the states. We have no phone, and we have no description. So if we check, maybe the first one, if I click on edit, we only have this name here, and we can edit here, edit here, edit here, right? And for this delete, all of these fields, they are disabled, but we read the data from this record. So this is a new test, right? And we can click on this button to delete it, but right now it's not working. Okay, so I'd like to show an ID here. Okay, if there is an ID, I'd like to show an ID field here, so the user knows this is a update. So we can do some update here in our component. We can add a column here. So let's say if we have an ID, so basically if form.id.value. So basically if this ID is the value of this ID is valid, and then we're going to show this ID here, okay? And I'd like to add a space here, empty space. So small screen, 8 media, let's change to 9. So in this way, let me show you to make it a little bit easier for you to understand. So right now, if I click, I have ID here, so which is takes three columns. Sorry, not 3 columns, which is take 4 columns. Okay, so this is ID. But if I click on this new create customer, because for new customer we don't have an ID for this record, so here you cannot see the ID, right? But for delete, you also have this ID and all of other information like this. So this is just a little bit of improvement for the user experience. Okay, not very important. Not very important. If you don't have these columns, you can still update or delete. It's not a big deal. So basically, I add this line of code here to improve this tool a little bit. Okay, as you can see, just a little simple, just a few lines of code, so you can do things like that. So I think this looks like a little bit better because you can see this ID here. Okay. So maybe I'd like to fix this select here. I think something wrong with this select. Okay, so I think it's here in this component, input component here. So for this select, I think this class is form select. Okay, let me check. So this is basically the Bootstrap class. I did something wrong there. So let me check. So I finally have this drop down like this. So this is a small issue. Okay, so as you can see, we have this form ready, right? we have this form ready, and we can handle this function here. So if I click on this update customer, I need to do something to update this record. Okay, so that's something we need to do at the backend. Okay, so before we move to backend, I think we also need to do something here at the front end. So this is a function to create a customer. Okay, and we can make a copy of this function and change it to updateCustomer. And in the same way, we can make a copy and deleteCustomer. So, and let me move this comment. So basically, if the mode is update, we call this function updateCustomer, and if the mode is delete, we delete customer with this function. Okay, so update customer, we have a data object here, is the same, but we need to keep this ID, right? Because we need to use this ID to locate, basically to identify which item in our backend. So we need to use this ID to find our record. Okay, so we don't need to remove this ID here. So let's get rid of this. And for this create item, I need to change it to updateItem. So for delete customer, the data, I think we don't need all of these values. The only values we need is the ID, right? If we have this ID, we can find a record at our backend, and then we can delete it from our database. So ID. So the ID we're going to be this dot new customer form. What is called customer form data ID value. So this is the ID, and we run with this function, and we change this create item to delete item, and this is the table name or the sheet name. We need to find a record from this tab, okay, with this ID, right? And this is the backend function update item and delete item. So we need to go back to our API. So if you check, we have a function here called create item. So we can make a copy of it and update it to update item. So we have a sheet name here. We don't need to change anything here for the data, right? And we get the headers, we get the records, get the keys, and we don't need to have this line, but we need to get the index of ID, which is the keys dot index of ID. So basically we get the column index for the ID. So basically at your backend, if you place this ID to another column, so it's not always to 1, right? So we get the index of ID, and what we can do, we need to find the record. So const record equal to or record index. We find the index, so basically records dot find index. We find the index, record and index of ID is equal to data.id. So basically, if record index is equal to -1, that means the ID cannot be found in your database. So we throw an error and data.id record data.id was not found in the database. So just in case you input a wrong ID or the record has already been deleted by somebody else, we just throw the error message to the end users. So if we do find a record, okay, so we can say the values equal to key map. So basically we get the values from the, let me check, yes, from this data. So this data is basically the updated value for this record. Okay, so we create new values from the record and we update it, wash it, get a range. So the row start should be this record index plus 2, not plus 1, plus 2 is the row position, okay, because this is this index. So if the ID is 1, the index ID is 0, okay. So 0 is the number with row 2, okay. So that's why we need to add 2 and number 2 here. And for the column we start at 1, okay. And the number of rows, which is 1, and the number of columns, which is values or length. And we're going to set values, which is a two-dimensional array, so we need to put the value in an array. So this values is a one single dimensional array, okay. Just a single dimensional array, and we push the data. So basically in this way we updated the record and we don't need to add this. This is for the new record. So, and the item, let's create item keys, and we place this new record to values. This value is updated values. So this is, I think this is a function to update item. And let me make a copy of this, and we can delete item. And we grab the ID from the data, because I think we only need to have this ID to delete the values. And we also need to get the index of the ID column, right? And we also need to use this record. We need to find the record here. So we don't need to have the value. And if the value, if this record is not found, we also throw an error like that. And if we do find this record, we need to delete this row, right? And row position is also row index plus 2. So this is going to delete the record, and I'm not going to return this message, but I'm going to return a success message, like message record with ID. So I put the ID here, has been removed, deleted successfully. So basically send a successfully. So basically send a message to the end user. So this is a function to delete a record from the database. And finally, let's add it here. Const updateItem is equal to sheet name JSON data and API.updateItem sheet name JSON data. Make a copy of this and update delete item and delete item. Okay, so this is for the, so basically this is the API functions, so which is used here. We called here delete item, so this function is going to be called, right? And this one is to update the function. So let's try it. Not sure if anything wrong there. So let's try to delete this record. Yes, let's delete it. Something is wrong. Delete the item, so it seems like there's something wrong. So you can check the execution, and you can find what's the matter. Data is not defined. Okay, API 82. API 82, data is not defined. '82, I think is the line. API 82. 82 data. Okay, so because we destructured this ID, so we don't need to use this. So let me do it again. Delete. So 143 should be deleted from the backend. Let me check. Yes, it's deleted from the backend. And need a while to refresh the home page. So let me do an edit. Let me change this name to Thorny, and phone description, address, setting Osaka, Japan, update customer, or is my I changed this to Thorny, right? And Japan, all of this is working fine, right? So I can create another Toshiba to contact at toshiba.com, and I create a customer and should update it here. And if I want to add a phone number, I can update the customer. And if I don't need this customer, I can delete it. And then Toshiba should be removed from the database. Right? So let me check if anything else is missing. So basically right now, the main function here, so basically the CRUD, the functions are basically here. You can read data. If you want to check another page, you can go to another page. So that's the read. And for create, you can add a new customer. And for the update, you can edit a record and you can update it. And for the delete, you also can delete a record from the database. So that's the basics about this application, as you can see. And you can improve this a lot. You can add more features. You can add more features to this application. But the most important thing is this basic structures of this application. Okay, you need to master this, and then you can start to build more and more applications. Because in your database, you maybe have a customer, and you maybe have sales, you maybe have some orders, you have your invoice. So all of these are very similar. Okay, they are basically a CRUD. All of them. Okay, so if you know how to do this for a customer, and you know how to do it for all of other similar CRUD applications, and you can combine them in one single application, and you can start to build more features. Just like you want to do some search, you can do it here, add a search box here, and you can search your database. So in your search, so basically is this function here, get items. If you remember, we have a function to get the items. We have the page size, the page, And then you can pass more filters here, right? With these filters, you can get the data you want. Okay, so this is what I mean. The get items, the search, and the read data from the backend is actually the same thing. It's just a customization of the read data. Okay, you need to apply different filters because your client maybe need to have different filters. Maybe I'd like to search the data by the email, or I'd like to search the customer by their name. So different people have different requests. You cannot do it in one single way. You do a search function for all of them. I don't think that's possible. Okay. So basically, you need to customize that part. Okay. So if you can do this, all of this CRUD basics, and I think it should be very easy for you to do that kind of functionalities. Okay, so I think that's almost it for the last part, and maybe in next project, maybe it's a preview for you guys. So it's something like this. Let me open my project. So it could be something like this, okay? So it could be something like this. So basically, if you know how to build the basic structure like this, right? I have a CRUD application for customer, let's say, and if you have another table, so let me show you the application here. The next project, I'm going to focus on the multiple page. So basically, you may have a home page. Like here, we only have one page, a page for your customer, right? And you have some functionalities to add a customer, edit customer. So what if we have another page for sales, and another page for users, another page for other stuff? So finally, you're going to need to manage the application like this way. You have a home page, you have a users, right? You have your sales, you have something else like login, logout. But I'm going to focus on the page. So basically, we have some routers here. So if you see here, if I click on home, I go to the home. If I click on users, it brings me to the users page, and sales, go to sales page like this. So about page, login, logout. So basically, you can add the functionalities, all of these functionalities to your application. But first of all, the most important part is this part. The functionalities is the most important thing, is the fundamental of your application. Okay, so you need to master this part first, and then you can start to think about your whole application. Okay, like the access management, something like that. Maybe different users can access different pages, so things like that. But the fundamental is very important, because if you don't know how to do it, you cannot make these functionalities. Okay, so this part is very important. And in our next project, I'm going to show you how to build the basic structures for this page navigation, okay, and data management or state management for this application. So as you can see, you just only need to build your home page, and you put the data here into this home. And for users, you add the same CRUD application for your users. For sales, your CRUD application for your sales, and you have a full functional application with different functionalities in your application. Okay, so I think that's it for this video, and I think we're going to see you soon in this project. Thank you. See you soon. Bye bye.